My name is Catherine, and I'm over 81, and so is my husband. And we have a son who is now 44 with severe paranoid schizophrenia. And he has been severely ill since he was 20. We had a problem getting him diagnosed and treated, because when we asked psychiatric services, they'd say to us, he's over 17, you have no rights. And so for 4 years he was just drifting. We know, everyone knows now, that the first 2 years of somebody with mental illness needs to be treated in those 2 years to get any good outcomes. He was sick for 4 years before we could get anything, and so by that time he was beginning to be chronic, and since then it has just been one up and down with him because he is so chronic and so difficult to treat. He is irrational. He doesn't listen or doesn't comprehend because the voices are telling him something else. He has a severe problem with voices. We finally said after that 2.5 years, I'm sorry, we cannot have you live with us. And he did stay with a very, very good friend who was a social worker. And after 6 months that friend rang me and said, I'm sorry, I can't deal with him any longer. And we had to say to him, unless you go for treatment, you cannot live with us. And that was a very difficult thing to say. And it would have been another 2 years before he finally came to us. So my husband went and got the script and the medication. And my son sat back and said, now I can come into the house, can't I? Talked to the psychologist who's employed by the mental health system. And he had seen my son for 4 sessions and stopped going, which was the pattern. He'd seen other psychologists as well. And finally we were so desperate that we said, like, we would like to see you. So we went and saw him, and we talked to him, and we told him what we'd done, and how we had said you can't live in the house, etc. And he said that's the best possible thing you could do because it shows you mean what you're saying. And I said, I think he has schizophrenia, or he's bipolar, but I think it's schizophrenia. He said, you're spot on. I give him 2 years. Without treatment, he will break down. And it was 2 years. And it was quite obvious to us that the rural part of the Bendigo Health was underfunded. And I had a big confrontation with the psychiatrist and the CEO. And I had the backing of the fellowship, and the whole thing started to take a new turn. Since he was diagnosed 20 years ago, he has lived in at least 15 different places. Now that the house we live in, the areas where he's had mental health treatment, he's lived in the forest, he has lived in the bush house that I was talking about earlier on, up in Maruya, he's lived in caravan parks, he's been in transitional housing, he has been in public rental housing, he's been in rural rental housing, caravan parks. The caravan parks come up time and time again, until about February last year he started to show signs of violence. And virtually since then it's been practically impossible to find him housing. MIF and rural housing did get him into a house, and he was there for a while, but he has been evicted in the last 3 years 4 times. So those are places where there's no hope of him getting any accommodation. Having been told that he should not live in the community, for himself and for the community, we would like him to go into a secure, safe accommodation, SEC units they're called, SECC units. Now in our area, in Bendigo, there is one place that has some beds. But even there, there's an expectation after about 2 years that they should probably be able to live in the community. Now, when somebody like our son goes into the community, he's there, you can almost see the antennae of the druggies. Ah, here's somebody else who'd like some marijuana, which upsets the whole treatment. We would like to see suitable supported accommodation in single units, not living in a locked-up institutional thing, no, but so that there's somebody trained watching what is going on, assessing, is everything okay here? He's falling, we'd better get him back to psych services. I've got a very nice photo of my son when he's in his late teens. Young man, clean-shaven, good features, good-looking. He was quite athletic, played a very, very good game of squash, for instance. That's all gone. His general physique, he's probably getting on for 6 foot, and he was well built. But now he's got a fat face, a terrible beard, so you can't feel much of his, and a big stomach, which is one of the things which doesn't improve self-image in any way. You could say, well, that's not the illness, that's the medication, but if you look like that, you feel like that, your self-image and your self-esteem is nil. It's impacted on his health a lot. Smokes like a chimney, coughs like a chimney, and as I say, he'll take marijuana if he can get it. He did have one time when he went into hard drugs. Somebody gave him a dirty needle and he got a very nasty infection. It must be a horrendous life he's living.